Welcome back to Omni Football. Today is a lightning round episode. It's going to be the fastest half an hour that we've ever recorded here. Am I clipping? I think I'm clipping. Wow. Came out the gates with energy. Woo! So today we have a action-packed episode. We only have 3 things actually on the episode, but it's action-packed. I'm definitely clipping. I'm so sorry. Okay, so for 5th episode now. This is awesome. So welcome back. If you're new, welcome, and if you've been a subscriber and a follower, thank you very much. I love you very much. Thank you for being here. So today the agenda will be sorry, I keep thinking I'm clipping, and I just have a loud voice. The people closest to me know that. They're always telling me to be quiet, but not today because no one's here. I live here by myself. So hopefully the shot, actually, now that I look at it, hopefully the shot is not too terrible. I'm trying it out. I prefer the other one, to be honest, but this one's easier to set up. So let's get into the agenda. The agenda today is we're going to start out the episode with talking about the U.S. men's national team and how exciting that is, because it really is exciting. Super, super duper exciting. I'm excited. People who follow the U.S. men's national team are excited. I'm sure the U.S. men's national team is excited. So we're going to talk about that, talk about 2021, how that relates, how that connects. So we'll be talking about that. What's today? Is today Tuesday? Happy Tuesday, everyone. Hope your Super Bowl weekend was great. Tom Brady, congratulations to Tom Brady. Moving on. So let's see here. Second thing on the agenda will be Sacramento Republic FC. That is the name of the team in Sacramento that will join the MLS in 2023, when the year that the U.S. will be at its peak number of 30 teams. So 30 teams will be in the league at 2023. In 2023, and Sacramento will be one of the very last teams to be added to the league, included with that year with St. Louis City SC. We're going to be talking about Sacramento Republic FC, and we will also be talking about, we'll be reacting to a TIFO football video, and I believe the video is called "Will Your Football Club Be Underwater in 2050?" That is the name of the video we'll be reacting to today. 2050, as if 2026 wasn't far enough in the future for me, and it isn't. It really isn't. So welcome. Hope you all are doing well. 2021. Today is February something. I have a watch, but it doesn't tell me what day it is. So welcome back. I hope everyone's doing well. And let's just get right into it. So first thing on the agenda, I sound like a committee, don't I? First thing on the agenda is the U.S. men's national team. Now, I listened to a podcast recently. Imagine that, a podcaster listening to podcasts. I listened to a podcast recently, and I was listening to Greg Berhalter. Now, Greg Berhalter is the coach for the U.S. men's national team. I don't know how long he's been in the job, but I asked my father how long it had been, and it seems to be less than 5 years. So he's been in the job for a bit, but not a whole lot. That's the technical scientific terms. So he's been the coach for a while, and he was talking to a podcast actually that the MLS itself sponsors, which is cool. MLS, hit me up. Yeah, he was talking to the MLS guys, and yeah, basically the quote of the podcast was, Americans are getting more respect in Europe. And that's a big statement because there have been American players who have gone overseas and play in the European leagues, but it really hasn't been until recently, and I'm talking about like the last 2 years, where we have a big influx of players from the United States being accepted and thriving in European football teams. So that's a big deal because, like I've mentioned before, like we all know, just kick a dead horse. European soccer is the best soccer. European football is the best football around the world, in terms of club, and also probably national team. But club soccer is the best in Europe. So if you're playing for a German club or an English club or a French club or an Italian club, you're going to be rubbing shoulders with the best of the best, which is not something you could say if you play in the MLS. And that's not a knock on the MLS. That's just the way it is right now, right? 2021, talk to me in 2050, okay? So I'm going to go through my top 11 U.S. men's national team players right now who are playing overseas. Recently, the U.S. men's national team played against, I believe it was Trinidad and Tobago. They played and they smashed them 7-0. The U.S. smashed Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know how you say that. But yeah, so we beat them 7-0. And it's interesting that team that played against Trinidad was the starting 11 for that team were all MLS players. No one from the European leagues were in that starting 11. So we clearly still have a decent enough team to beat Trinidad 7-0 with only MLS players. But we have the main people from who I think are our highest quality are definitely those who are playing overseas right now in Europe specifically. So I'm going to go through the 11 players right now who I think we should kind of document, kind of talk about a little bit to make sure or to kind of highlight right now as of 2021 that have the brightest future, at least next year in 2022 for the World Cup in Qatar, and also potentially 2026, which is only 4 years away. Next year, 5 years away from now. So yeah, so to start it all off, we're going to go with, and I'll try to put their pictures up right now, stock photos, baby. Christian Pulisic is the golden boy of our current generation. Now, Christian Pulisic will be 22 next year. He was born in Hershey, Pennsylvania, I believe, and currently plays for Chelsea in England, Chelsea in London, and is playing Premier League soccer. He is definitely probably the golden boy of this generation. He started in Dortmund, got a lot of hype. Now he's playing in Chelsea. He dribbles like Eden Hazard. And I feel like he's got a lot of potential. I think he's an attacker. So when he gets the ball, he looks to dribble direct. He's gotten some really good assists at Chelsea. He's also scored some goals. Every kind of goal too. Shooting, heading, all kinds of goals. So he's definitely, I think, going to be a very big key in our success as the United States enters into the international competitions that are coming up. So Christian Pulisic. Next, we're going to stick with the Premier League. And this isn't necessarily in order, but Anthony Robinson will be 23 next year. He is from West Manchester City, New York, and currently plays for Fulham. Sorry, I thought I heard a car alarm. That would have been annoying. So Anthony Robinson, I believe he's a left back or a left wing back or some kind of defender. He is playing Premier League football, so that's a good starting point for sure. I know Fulham's not a super great team, but I mean, they're definitely playing Premier League football. That is, that's good. So that's another name to keep an eye out. Next, we're looking at Brendan Aronson. Now, Brendan Aronson, and I'm reading this off my phone because I don't know, 2021. Brendan Aronson will be 20 next year, so a young guy. Born in Medford, New Jersey, and currently plays for Red Bull Salzburg. Now, yeah, that's the Austrian Bundesliga. So Salzburg, I believe, is in Austria, and that's in Europe. And yeah, I think that Brendan Aronson, if I'm not mistaken, is an attacker as well. A huge prospect, huge talent, and is playing regular football in Europe. And so Brendan Aronson's a person to keep an eye out. Next we have Gio Reyna. Gio Reyna plays for currently Dortmund. Gio Reyna is a really young person right now, young person, yeah. They're going to be 18 next year. Gio Reyna from New York plays for Borussia Dortmund in Germany. Now, Borussia Dortmund is a great team, one of the biggest teams in Europe. Clearly, I mean, really, in terms of like supporters. Definitely Gio Reyna. I've seen his highlights. He hooks up well with Erling Haaland, who is he Dutch or is he? I don't know. I think he's Dutch. Or no, he's Norwegian. He's Norwegian. So Erling Haaland is a really promising forward and his nationality is Norwegian. Gio Reyna is getting a lot of minutes playing around Erling Haaland, as an creative attacking player. And I think Gio Reyna, at the age of 18, playing alongside some really great players at Dortmund, Gio Reyna is definitely going to be someone to look out for. Moving along, we have John Brooks. John Brooks is a defender. Now, I think if we're talking about all of the quality that we're going to have as a U.S. men's national team roster, I think defenders are going to be maybe the thinnest part of the roster. We have a lot of attacking, creative players and a lot of midfield and strikers, but we don't have a lot of defenders. Now, John Brooks is a defender, will be 28 next year, born in Germany, Berlin, Germany, and plays for Wolfsburg. But he is an American in terms of international soccer. That's what he's chosen to participate as. Some people have dual citizenship. He's playing in Germany, and he's going to be an integral part of our defense too. And I mean, you can score a lot of goals, but if you give up more goals than you score, you lose the game. So we definitely, as a U.S. team, definitely need good defenders. Couple more here, more than a couple actually. Josh Sargent plays for Werder Bremen. Will be 20 next year. Born in Missouri, I believe. Currently plays for Wolfsburg in. Wait a minute. So John Brooks plays in Wolfsburg. I'm so sorry. Josh Sargent plays in Werder Bremen. So yeah, Germany. Josh Sargent is a forward, I believe, a striker, and yeah, really young. Will be 20 next year, but already looking very promising in terms of our roster that we're going to be building. It's looking really, really impressive and really kind of hopeful too, because for a long time, I think the United States soccer culture has been longing to see like a really competitive team hit the international scale. But we've always kind of fallen short because I think the players that we've taken, although they've been good, they haven't been able to beat other international teams in world football. We haven't even really gotten close, to be honest, to winning a World Cup. I think if the United States were to ever win a World Cup, I think that soccer for sure would definitely get a boost in terms of fans in general around the United States. Let's do two more here. Two more very important people here that I think, and there's a bunch. I'm pulling this off of Bleacher Report, who recently released a huge list of players who are playing in Europe's top leagues, Americans who are playing in Europe's top leagues. And these are just the ones that I've singled out that I know are going to be big names. Serginho Dest plays for Barcelona, age 20 next year, born in the Netherlands, plays for Barcelona, and I believe he chose to play for the U.S., which is quite frankly amazing, to be honest. I mean, if you're born in Europe and you have the chance to play for maybe a European national team, like let's say the Netherlands, or the United States, who have never won or even gotten close to any kind of huge international trophy, it's a big deal. I think that Serginho Dest, who's I believe a right back, a defender, it's a huge deal that he picked the United States. So very happy about that. Serginho Dest plays for Barcelona. And last but definitely not least, Westin Mckenney plays for Juventus in Italy, will be 22 next year, born in Texas. And I've seen some of the goals that Westin Mckenney has scored. And man, he is a great midfielder. Let me tell you, I'm going to put that down. He's a great midfielder. I think that he is able to really be an effective midfielder on the defensive side of the ball. And when the team goes and attacks, he's there to finish off some pretty cool goals. I've seen him score in the Champions League. I've seen him score for Juventus. Some crazy acrobatic goals too, not even simple goals. So Westin Mckenney for sure. The United States are going to be in World Cup qualifiers, so on the road to World Cup 2022, which is next year. They're going to be playing matches in September of this year, October, November of 2021, and January and March of 2022 next year. So right up until basically the summer of 2022, which is actually not when the World Cup is happening, but it's happening in the winter of 2022. So, but yeah, there's plenty more U.S. players to talk about. Those are just a couple, maybe not even 11. I don't think I even did 11, but we do what we do. So yeah, I'm going to take a quick little break and I'll be right back. Welcome back. So we are talking about Sacramento Republic FC. Now, Sacramento is going to be one of the very last teams to be joining the MLS in 2023. They are indeed located in Sacramento, California, and it is our next stop in our MLS road trip. And I want to just kind of go through a little bit of the top details because at this moment, they're kind of not really that relevant to MLS. They will be as we get closer to 2023. But they're playing, I believe, in the USL, the championship of the USL, which is, I believe, one of the lower leagues in the United States. And yeah, but they got the bid to join the MLS, and currently they play in Papa Murphy's Park. That's the name of their stadium. A capacity of 11,000 people in the stadium. And yeah, I don't really like their logo, to be honest. I'll put it up right now. I think that it could be cooler. The fact that they have a red star, which is kind of also a little bit communist. Can I say that out loud? I think I just did anyway. But yeah, they have a red star, which I think is fine. It's cool. I like red stars. And then they also have a bear on their logo, which I think is even cooler. That should be their like main focus. But yeah, Sacramento Republic FC, I'm pretty sure because they have a USL history, they'll probably keep their logo as they enter into the MLS. But I'm a little bit colorblind, and by a little, I mean I'm colorblind. So I don't know exactly what color this is, but this doesn't look that great. I do like the red star and the brown bear, but I think it could be cooler. But yeah, so they are going to be building a stadium called the Rail Yard Stadium in Sacramento, and it's supposed to be 21,000 people, or fit 21,000 people in Sacramento. I'll put up some pictures that I found, and to be honest, I've been reading about Sacramento, and there's a big like push towards like a redevelopment, a kind of a bringing up in the city of Sacramento. They really want to like make it like a place for people to come, for local people to come. They really want to make it like an attractive city to move to, not just for this stadium, but in general, in the whole of Sacramento. And yeah, I mean, I think this stadium looks really cool. I do like the red accent. Again, I like the red. And yeah, I think it looks really cool. I have no doubt that they're going to make this because they already have a spot for it. And as far as I can tell, the Sacramento area really like their sports. So yeah, so this is going to look really cool. But that's kind of all I have to say about it because, I mean, to be honest, they're not really in the league and they have like cool renderings, but at this moment, they're not really like that relevant to the league. Other than that, they're going to be there. So that's cool. And I'm sure that the Sacramento people, and indeed the 3 other teams in California, are also going to be, I guess, interested in Sacramento's new soccer team. Sacramento, this may be a fun fact, Sacramento is 30 feet above sea level. And 30 feet is not a lot of feet, but I was actually looking at a website where it was showing the rise in sea levels depending on how hot the Earth's climate gets worldwide. And I believe that the sea levels are estimated to rise. I'm actually not even going to quote that because I don't have the exact information and I don't want to give bad information. But I am reading here that with a 10 feet rise in sea level, which isn't impossible over the next 30 years, parts of Sacramento and the Valley Delta will be underwater. And that's a good segue to the video we're going to react to next, because climate change is real. And if we, as a human species, don't take care of our planet, then there will definitely be ramifications for everything going forward, for everything, every part of life that we know, including sport. And that is exactly the topic of the video we're about to watch. So I'll be right back and we'll watch the video. And we're back. So quick disclaimer, if for any reason the audio is like muted during this next portion of the podcast, it's because the video I'm reacting to is using licensed music, and as a way to not get copyright infringements, YouTube and indeed Omni Football just chooses not to use licensed music. So we're going to watch the video right now, and I'm going to try and pause and give my commentary in the meantime. But yeah, just a quick disclaimer. Cool. And we're off.
92 league teams in England. By 2050, 23 of those teams, a quarter, can expect partial or total annual flooding of their stadiums. Rising temperatures, prolonged periods of drought, new patterns of precipitation, destructive storms, and rising sea levels. These are the extreme weather events with which football will have to cope in the future, and this is how the game can mitigate its most disastrous consequences. In 2015, English football got a glimpse of the future when the torrential rain accompanying Storm Desmond saw Carlisle United's Brunton Park flooded, and the club forced out of the stadium for 7 weeks. Operations manager Nigel Dickinson said, "When we were able to access our stadium about 3 days later, office desks had been turned over by the force of the water, which had risen to the height of nearly 10 feet on the lower concourses." Now, despite this, and with enormous effort, the club was able to win an FA Cup third-round tie away from home and bring Everton back to Brunton Park for the fourth round. Now, of course, there are limits to most fairy tales, and Everton won that game 3-0. Carlisle sustained huge costs and now, as a result, pay massively increased insurance premiums. And in 2017, their training ground and car park flooded all over again. Storm Desmond is just one part of a wider pattern of extreme weather events produced by global climate change. In the last year alone, the 2019 Rugby World Cup was disrupted by unprecedented Pacific typhoons. The 2019 Australian Tennis Open was disrupted by the smoke blowing in from the country's devastating bushfires. And the Tokyo 2020 Olympics were forced to move long-distance running events 1,000 kilometers north of the capital as the city's sweltering summer weather now makes them impossible to run.
I'm going to pause it there too. Tokyo, and indeed Japan, if you look at the map, is a similar latitude, longitude. I believe latitude is a similar latitude to California, which is where I'm from. And if you don't know, LA is known for its weather and its other two things, but it is a hot place, and as temperatures continue to rise around the world due to climate change, a lot of parts of California and indeed LA will be hotter and hotter every year, and it's going to be harder to perform athletic events outside without some kind of adaptation to the climate, and clearly the Olympics being no exception.
So what will all of this mean for football?
Licensed music.
Very hot weather is going to be a problem for spectators and players alike. The physiology of overheating is complex, but once you start hitting 33 to 35 centigrade and you're playing football, it's all bad news. And there are going to be a lot more days like that in the global football calendar in the next few decades. Memory, eye-hand coordination, and concentration all start suffering. And then there are heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke.
Not fun.
The 2019 Women's World Cup and African Cup of Nations were played in conditions like this and hotter. FIFA introduced extra water breaks for players, but this and more extreme measures will have to become the norm in many parts of the world. It's only a matter of time until, like the Australian Tennis Open of 2014, we are medically treating thousands of spectators for heat exhaustion.
Dang.
So summers will be hotter in many places, but winter football will be wetter and wilder, and coastal stadiums will be confronted by rising sea levels.
No jokes.
Using mapping technology combined with mainstream climate change and sea level models, we can see that by 2050, Werder Bremen's Weserstadion and Toronto FC's BMO Field will be partially flooded every year, and Bordeaux's Mamou Olympique Stadium will be completely flooded annually.
I'm going to pause it there. Toronto BMO Field, partially flooded by 2050 at the current rate. So Toronto's in MLS. I doubt that they're going to be the only ones with this problem in 2050. Now, I granted, it is far away. I mean, 2026 is far in the future. 2050 is very far in the future. But We're talking about football. Football is something that is continuous, goes beyond even my lifetime, everyone's lifetime. It's a thing that we can all enjoy, this generation and future generations. So it's important to talk about this, to think about this. I think it's also ironic that the Atlantique Stadium will be underwater.
However, this is as nothing to the fate awaiting the football stadiums of England and the Netherlands. In England, 23 of the 92 Football League grounds can expect partial or total annual flooding of their stadiums by 2050. The four under threat in the current Premier League are Southampton's St Mary's, Norwich's Carrow Road, Chelsea's Stamford Bridge and West Ham's London Stadium. 7 are at risk in the Championship, including Hull City and Cardiff City's grounds, which will both be entirely underwater. Middlesbrough's Riverside will itself avoid flooding, but nonetheless require a flotilla of boats to get fans to the ground across the wide flooded plains of the city. Doncaster, one of 5 clubs at risk in League One, will suffer the same fate. League Two will also see 5 clubs flooded out, including Grimsby Town's Blundell Park, which will sit beneath the new North Sea. Things will be wet in the Netherlands too, with the stadiums of ADO Den Haag, Groningen, Heerenveen and Utrecht can look forward to total annual flooding, with partial floods for Ajax and Feyenoord. This kind of weather doesn't only affect professional sport, but amateur and grassroots sports as well. In England in 2014, the average grassroots pitch lost 5 weeks per season to bad weather, and a third of those pitches lost between 2 and 3 months in a season. Football is not just a victim of change, but an important contributor to global heating too. So, how much carbon does it produce? Well, as a measure, the 2010 World Cup in South Africa produced 2.75 million tonnes. Brazil in 2014 produced 2.27 million tonnes, and most recently, the 2018 tournament hosted in Russia produced 2.16 million tonnes. Of those figures, on average, around 3/4 is attributable to fans travelling to the tournaments. And, on the basis of spectator attendance, World Cups are around 1/5 to 1/4 of all international football over a 4-year cycle, meaning that the game is racking up around 10 million tonnes of carbon a year, an output roughly equivalent to the whole of Bolivia. And what about club football? Well, one of the best studies of carbon emissions from a football club is for Fluminense, from Rio in 2014. This calculated that the club's activities, all their teams, aviation and spectator travel included, emitted 2,500 tonnes a year. Translating this into emissions for other leagues, in richer countries which generally emit more carbon and generate more waste, we can adjust by looking at the ratio of per capita carbon emissions between Brazil and another country. So in the case of the English Premier League, the ratio would be 2.35. We can assume that a Premier League club produces approximately 2.35 times as much carbon as a Brazilian club. However, the Premier League has a lot more spectators than the Brazilian Championship, and spectators are the biggest carbon emitters, so again, a ratio needs to be calculated with the Premier League attracting 14.5 million spectators per year to the Brazilian Championship's 8.5 million.
I'm going to pause it there, right after the number of spectators. I think that's an important point, and I'll let it run because it is... I don't want to pause it too much either. But like we had mentioned earlier, the MLS is a huge system of teams because the United States itself is huge. Now, spectators do definitely, I think, add to the experience of the games. And I think in the end, it's really the only reason why the games even happen. But I also do think that, especially given the fact that the United States is so massive, we definitely need to think about what the best balance between allowing fans to go to games, right? Away games as well as home games, while maintaining this in mind, that the more fans travel, the more travel there is in general, the more emissions there are, unless we find a way to either cut down on travel and make travel only necessary within, let's say, Western and Eastern conferences, or even more divisible. Or if, for example, the MLS were to create initiatives to have sustainable resources or sustainable modes of travel be the norm. And I think in a country like the United States, where that's definitely possible, I think the United States and indeed the MLS could be a huge, I guess, role model in the world as to how we could do that. The MLS is young enough to the point where certain, I guess, policies and certain ways of doing things are still viable. And I mean, as you see here, I mean, spectators are a crucial part of that equation. And I think that the MLS can be that change.
And by the time you've added up the world's more than 200 leagues, added all the international club competitions in, accounted for the huge aviation consumption of the football business itself, and factored in a football-sized chunk of the carbon footprint of the sportswear industry, that's a carbon footprint the size of another small nation. Some parts of the football world have been acting on this. Perhaps the biggest challenge for global sport is dealing with the carbon emissions from spectator attendance, especially at international events, which generate huge amounts of air traffic. UEFA experimented at the 2016 European Championships with a campaign and app that would allow fans to offset their own carbon emissions when attending the tournament, but the take-up was very low. Consequently, UEFA decided to absorb the entire costs of offsetting the aviation emissions for Euro 2020 themselves. If international football is to continue in anything close to its current form, this must, at the minimum, be the default model for every single international sporting event. Best in class has been Forest Green Rovers in Nailsworth in the west of England, who play in League Two, the fourth level of English professional football, but who are the first UN-certified carbon zero football club in the world. The club uses 100% renewable energy, has switched to vegan food for staff and fans, installed extensive rainwater recycling, a solar-powered lawnmower, and plenty of electric vehicle charging points. It now has planning permission to build the first new wooden stadium in Britain for over a century, and the first carbon zero stadium ever. German football is also leading the way. Both Mainz and Freiburg have almost a decade of environmental work behind them, pioneering recycling, green waste management, and the use of renewable energy in football. Werder Bremen has built one of the largest solar panel arrays in football, introduced ferry services to the stadium to cut down on car use, and has actually banned car parking around the stadium on match days. All three of these clubs encouraged their staff to attend the Friday for Future climate strikes. TSG Hoffenheim, meanwhile, have been investing in African forestry, as well as sustainable textile and environmental education projects. Elsewhere in Germany, Augsburg invested heavily in a geothermal energy system to make their new stadium carbon neutral, while Wolfsburg, almost uniquely in the world game, has calculated its carbon footprint. Now, while these initiatives have been a useful start, they aren't a solution. In an effort to bring some political urgency to the problem, the UN and some of the leading world sports organizations, including FIFA and UEFA, in 2016 launched the UN Sport for Climate Action Framework and invited the sporting world to sign up. It requires organizations to take systematic measures to reduce their carbon emissions and reach climate neutrality by 2050. Along the way, they're asked to educate their athletes, clubs, and spectators on climate change issues and advocate for sustainable solutions. There are, however, no targets in the framework, and no mechanisms of control, and above all, no adequate sense of urgency. The climate science is increasingly clear. The limit temperature rises to 1.5 centigrade by 2050 model will be pretty catastrophic in its own right, and that we have to do the vast majority of our decarbonisation in the next decade. And then there's the question of hope, in short supply and with many, many calls upon it. Football from the street to the stadium generates hope. Hope that the hard work yields improvement, that no cause is lost until the game is actually at an end, that the past tells us miraculous recoveries, turnovers and rallies are possible, and that human beings, individually and collectively, have the heart and the wit, when the time comes, to make it happen.
All right, so yeah, that's the end. I'm going to go ahead and pause that so I can talk. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of information, definitely, and a lot of math for sure. But I think that it's an important thing. I mean, we come prepared to the podcast here, so it's an important thing to talk about. You got to pay attention because it matters. I think that there's a lot of good call to actions in that. I think that there is, like it or not, there's going to be changes, I believe, in the world's climate as we continue into the future. And I think that the United States and the MLS have a great opportunity to be a good role model in how they develop their league now that they have 30 teams in a couple of years, and also implementing some policies that will allow players and fans to try and be as climate neutral as possible, carbon neutral as possible. I mean, we see large corporations in the United States doing the same thing, making those pledges. And I think that now that we have an administration that is adding or is going to add the U.S. back into the Paris Accords, I think that climate change is an important thing that all organizations should consider seriously, because it affects us all. And I mean, we all want to go see these games. We all want to go have a great time. And we all want everyone to be able to do that sustainably through the future. I think that it's a good goal. It's a good goal. Oh, wow, that's a pun. Wow. But yeah, so anyways, thank you so much for watching. A long episode, but action-packed. Like I said, way more than half an hour. Or not way more, we'll see. But thank you very much. I appreciate you for liking, and I appreciate you for subscribing. Thank you very much, and have a great week. I love you all.